You're listening to Filter Free America.
Well, Filter Free America is where I wanna be. Riding on the shiny black shores of oil-soaked Lady Liberty, with justice not just blind, but deaf, dumb, and unkind. Thank God I'm filter free. It's Filter Free America.
Motherfucker!
Hello, Filter Free America listeners. Welcome back once again to the Filter Free America podcast. And as always, I am extremely happy you are here with me. Real quick up front, this is a no guest episode of the Filter Free America podcast. That is right. It is just me talking at you. So yeah, if there's any preparation that you need for that, please do. This episode is about my experimentation with mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and specifically a 7.56 gram dose that I just took the day before recording this episode. And I am not even fully recovered from it yet. Like right now, as I'm recording this right now, I've got little like a line of white flashing triangular shaped fractals tracing across the sky right now out of the corner of my eye. I thought it was my glasses. I took those off. I put my contacts in to change up. Same effect. I'm apparently still tripping off of the 7.56 gram dose. All right, I am going to tell you in this episode, I'm going to tell you how I prepared them. I'm going to tell you about as much as my experience as I can remember and how I feel now, which is the next day. So if you are here for the interview episodes, as I mentioned before, this is not one, so feel free to skip this episode if it doesn't seem like something you're into. I'm definitely not going to be offended about that. And yes, there will be plenty of more interview episodes coming. I've already got some recorded and edited and so forth. I just wanted to hurry up and capture this episode and get it released while it was all still fresh in my fucking melted brain. Also, as a warning and a disclaimer or what have you, I am in no way intending this episode to be a suggestion to any listener to push the envelope of psychedelic extremes like I attempted to do successfully. I should add, I don't want anybody to listen to this as me saying, hey, this is what you need to do. None of that, no. The use of psychedelics is a very adult decision to make, and that decision should be made only after you've invested the time in educating yourself on them. There are other factors to be considered too, that I will touch on in this episode as well too. But again, disclaimer. This is an adult decision I made on my own. I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. Real quick, let me mention the sponsor for the Filter Free America podcast, and that is simplewebsite.us. Simplewebsite.us. If you're not familiar with them, what they do is they use the Squarespace website building website to build websites for you. Are you confused? You shouldn't be, because here's the deal. Yes, Squarespace is designed to make it easy for an individual to build their own website, but if you are like me and are limited in the world of computer skills or patience in general, it may not be as easy for you as it is for some people. And that's where Simple Website comes in, because what they need you to do is go to their website, simplewebsite.us, contact them, tell them what kind of Squarespace website you want, what you want on it, what do you want it to do, and they will build it for you from the ground up. They will even maintain it for you too if you need them to. If you'd like to see an example of some of the work, please go to the Filter Free America website right now. filterfreeamerica.com, Filter Free America, America always intentionally misspelled with the letter K.com. and you will see the website that they have built and maintained for me. It looks really good. It's very functional. It's exactly the way that I wanted it, and I couldn't be happier with it. Another reason you should go there is if you go to the Filter Free America website, you will find quick links to the Facebook page, Twitter, my personal Instagram account. I don't really have one for the podcast, it's just mine, and also Reddit on there too. So it's a good way to go and connect with the Filter Free America podcast by clicking on all our social media links. But again, go there and look at the website. Look at how good of a job this simple website can do. And if you're interested in having them build one, go to simplewebsite.us right now. Now, let me point this out. Then you don't have to go to them only to have a website built from the ground up. Say you've already got a Squarespace website started, or you've already got one built and you want to improve it, and you do want to see what they can do for you, contact them too, okay? Because they will take a website that you've already built, they will improve it, they will make it better. Anything that you're struggling with or an issue that you can't get to work right, simplewebsite.us will take care of it for you. So with that, let's kick this episode off. And of course, we're going to need to name this one. And I'm going to name this episode My 7.56 Gram Mushroom Trip with me, Joey Vincent, right? Of course it's going to be with me because it's just me on the episode, right? So here we go. My 7.56 gram mushroom trip with me, Joey Vincent, right here on the Filter Free America podcast. Let's go.
How you do it, in my humble opinion, but based on experience, is you take a committed dose.
Trust the mushroom to take you on this ride, and you'll be okay when it's over.
It's so incredibly profound that I still cannot wrap my mind around it.
These are mushrooms. It's a psychedelic drug. Makes you see weird things and feel happy for a few hours.
Where the problem area lies, people think it lies in taking too much. It lies in taking too little. Because if you take too little, you can resist it. What you want to do is take sufficiently enough that there's no escape.
Okay, like I mentioned in the intro, I'm going to tell you how I prepared my shrooms, what my shroom trip was like, and I'm going to share with you guys some of the embarrassing effects that I experienced. And yes, nudity is involved.
I'm so wet right now!
But first, I want to toss you some information on how exactly it is that psilocybin mushrooms or magic mushrooms alter your brain. To do that, I borrowed some audio from one of my favorite science-related YouTube channels, and that is ASAP Science. ASAP Science. If you're looking for entertaining YouTube videos that have an element of science to them and just kind of weird and interesting, please go check out ASAP Science and give them a subscription. Some of the video titles I'm looking at right now as I'm recording this is How Much Pain Can You Handle? Our DNA test results, and the one I'm going to watch as soon as I finish recording this episode, drinking our own pee. Yeah, that's definitely sounds like that's right up my alley. Yeah, so go to ASAP Science on YouTube, give them a subscribe, ring their little bell, and all that stuff that video people want you to do. But now let's play the audio from their video so you can learn a little bit more about these shrooms that I shoved in my face. And this video is titled Your Brain on Shrooms.
Psychedelic or magic mushrooms have been ingested by humans for over 9,000 years. Even today, this naturally grown fungus is commonly used as a recreational drug, causing hallucinations. But how exactly does it work? The main psychoactive ingredient in shrooms is called psilocybin. When ingested, the body breaks it down into the active drug psilocin, which makes its way to the brain. And here it begins to prevent the reuptake of the neurotransmitter serotonin, increasing its activity. On top of this, psilocin actually has a similar chemical structure exposure to serotonin, meaning it can also bind to and stimulate receptors in the brain. This amplified stimulation causes you to perceive and experience things without any real stimulus, also known as hallucination. These can be of a varying nature, from visual to auditory sensations or mystical and insightful feelings. And while the experience can be quite enjoyable, some users have reported very unpleasant episodes. These feelings generally last between 3 to 8 hours, but could feel much longer as the drug alters your sense of time. Scientists have also suggested that the brain may temporarily rearrange itself by inhibiting normal brain activity and immediately creating new biologically stable brain connections. This ultimately makes it harder to determine reality from fantasy and amplifies your intensity of thought, which makes planning ahead and self-conscious thinking almost impossible. We also see activation in the hippocampus and anterior cingulate cortex, which are associated with dreaming. Finally, specific emotional regions of the brain are chemically activated, which can lead to a sense of expanding consciousness. And because the drug temporarily alters the paths in your brain, thinking outside the box becomes extremely natural. In a famous US study, 36 college-educated participants were given psilocybin and observed in a laboratory. 1/3 of the participants reported the experience as the single most spiritually significant moment in their lives, with 2/3 putting it in their top 5. 2 months after taking the drug, 79% of the participants reported increased well-being and satisfaction. Friends and family were also interviewed and agreed with these claims. But it's not all so positive. 22% of the clinically tested individuals experienced fear and paranoia at certain points during their trip. And because of the state of their brains, these typically manifested as terrifying and uncontrollable hallucinations. Though much is still unknown about shrooms, they're not considered clinically addictive and cause little toxicity to other organ systems. In fact, a UK study found that they caused the least amount of damage, both to the individual and to others, when compared to other recreational drugs. Ultimately, scientists believe that the laws need to change around clinical testing of the drug so advanced research can be executed to fully understand both the positive and negative effects that this magic fungus has on our brain.
All right, let's now talk about my dose and how I prepare my shrooms for consumption. As a reminder, the dose size, the dose that I took just yesterday was 7.56 grams.
They ain't too goddamn buku.
Or just a little bit more than a quarter ounce total. This is dry weight shrooms. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with dosages or shrooms in general, you're probably wondering how big is a 3.56 gram ounce. Let me put it this way. The Terence McKenna, the man often referred to as the Tim Leary of the 90s, and sometimes the intellectual voice of rave culture, called a 5-gram dose of psilocybin mushrooms a heroic size dose.
You my goddamn hero.
Yeah, so basically that means that 5 grams, that means you're going to see some shit.
That's a huge bitch.
Yeah, so that is a big dose. 7.56 grams is actually 2.56 grams above a heroic dose, and 2.56 grams in itself is probably enough for a decent low-level trip. So obviously the amount that I ingested was substantial. Let me be very, very clear, though. Very clear. 7.56 grams is not in any way, shape, or form a first-time dose, and definitely a dose that should be built up to. Meaning, just don't jump out of the plane cramming shrooms in your face. We'll start out with like a little bit, my first ever dose, just so you know how I came into this. My first ever dose was 2.5 grams dry meaning I just ate the shrooms. I ate them on a peanut butter sandwich.
You want some of my nut butter?
To be exact. Eating them dry will make the effect come on more slowly. And that's also good, obviously. It's a good thing for a first-timer to not get hit with it as fast as you possibly could. You want to slowly feel it come on and being able to deal with it that first time. And a 1.5 to 2 grams is, in my GED-educated opinion, a good first-time dose. So if you are going to make the adult decision to do this, and you feel you're fully informed and and ready to take a trip, may I suggest to you, in no way am I a doctor.
Doctor?
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 And doctor.
May I suggest to you, you start somewhere in 1.5 to 2 grams at most. And if you're a tiny person, maybe closer to the 1 side.
Take it easy, Mary. Take it easy.
All right, now my pre-consumption preparation.
We ready?
To me, you need to plan to take shrooms. They are not like weed, when you can just randomly decide to use it when someone, whips it out at a concert or a barbecue or a glory hole meetup. I feel you need like a 24-hour kind of prep time window, and I'll explain why. Most of that time is actually for you to get a good night's sleep, 7 to 9 hours of sleep before you ingest psilocybin mushrooms. A shroom trip, even a 2 to 4 gram dose size, can be taxing on the mind. You want to be rested and hydrated going into one.
You want something to drink?
Now, full disclosure, I had between 5 to 6 hours at most sleep before I did this 7.56 gram trip, and that was a mistake.
You done fucked it up.
As you will learn, it played a role in my trip experience, and it was definitely a negative one in my view.
Negative Ghost Rider, the pattern is full.
All right, aside from rest, clear your calendar for 24 hours after taking shrooms. Again, this experience is mentally taxing, and you will feel exhausted afterwards. Maybe not everybody, but that's not across the board. After 7.56 grams, I'll tell you what, I was extremely exhausted myself. Allow time to recover is basically the point. Like, you don't want to do a shroom trip the night before going to work at 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. It's going to affect your work performance.
My job consists of basically masking my contempt for the assholes in charge, and at least once a day retiring to the men's room so I can jerk off.
I actually performed in a show with a comedian who thought it was a good idea to eat 3.5 grams on the afternoon before a show we were co-headlining. It was as you imagine. He went on before me and spent the majority of his set reading out of I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure it was a Stephen King book of some kind. I don't remember the book. I'm 99% sure it was a Stephen King book. But he was trying to read it and be ironically funny on the stage. I can only assume he thought it would crush.
Move this man!
It definitely didn't. But the point is, don't do mushrooms before doing your job, especially if I have to follow you on a stage. Aside from having recovery time set aside, you should also want time to reflect on your experience.
Everything is divine, and I'm that.
Okay? While shrooms can be fun, they are, in my view, more importantly, therapy for the mind. A powerful shroom trip will make you question and examine all parts of your life and drop a grand piano on your ego.
Whose idea was this?
Also, under the prep part, make sure all of your responsibilities are dealt with. Things like feeding your pets and making sure your fucking kids have a sitter or someone to care for them while you're doing what feels like at times intergalactic space travel.
Who here hasn't been to space?
Okay, you don't have to worry about fucking feeding your kids. Put them in a box or something.
Oh, what's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Now, with all that out of the way, let's talk about how I prepare my shrooms to consume them and why. Now I only take shrooms in tea form.
Ah, yes, indeed, the tea. You must have a cup of tea.
For a few reasons. The biggest one, shrooms taste like how dirty buttholes smell.
That's disgusting.
Not good. Not good. So since I don't want to taste what dirty buttholes smell like, I consume mine in the form of a tea to drink them down faster, get them over your taste buds, and also mask some of the negative butthole smelly flavor of the mushrooms if you were to eat them or just boil them in regular water. I even spoon in a small spoon of sugar into my cup to help counter the taste.
You're a bitch!
Also, as a tea, the effects will hit you faster and will help you reach your peak trip levels almost immediately. It's like once you get it, you start to feel the roll come on, it happens pretty fast after the tea. And also, something else I do to help increase the absorption rate, I also chase my tea with OJ.
Hey, Twitter world.
Not the murderer OJ, the drink OJ.
I got a little getting even to do.
Because OJ or any citric acid juice will speed up how fast your body absorbs the psilocybin.
We'll deal with that.
Lastly, if you also don't eat for 2 to 5 hours pre-trip, the effects will also feel stronger.
Bigger and better and stronger.
I actually ate before this trip, the 7.56 trip I'm telling you about, I actually ate a 2-ounce piece of buffalo jerky and a small cut-up green apple with pink Himalaya salt.
Oh, how delicious it is!
1 hour, a little bit, maybe an hour and 15 minutes before my trip. Mainly because, holy fuck, it's 7.56 grams, and I didn't want to just take all that in on an empty stomach. That's a whole lot.
That's too much power for one man to have.
Okay, now for the tea itself, how I actually made my tea it's pretty simple.
I'm stupid, you're smart.
I start with measuring an exact amount of fluoride-free water that is an amount large enough to fill my large double cup coffee mug to about 3/4 of the way full. I dump it into a small pot, bring that pot of water up to a boil, and then turn it off and toss in the 1 tea bag and my shrooms. And I just kind of let them kind of sit in the water and steep for about 15 minutes.
15 minutes later.
All I did to the shrooms themselves before tossing them into the water, a couple things. I break them up by hand. When you get them from the magic person. Magic man! Who has them. Some of them are whole stems, some of them are whole caps, some of them are already broken up. But I just break them up into, little manageable size pieces. And then what I do is I take them, I throw them in my little bowl and pestle. You know what a bowl and pestle is? I got it right here. It's that thing where you grind up shit. You often see them on can you hear that? Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It's a marble one. It's pretty dope. You always see them on pharmacy signs, because they're telling you that they're really good for drug use. Yeah, so that's what I do. I grind them up in that, and then just toss them in the water. Now, after the steeping, I remove the bag and then pour the tea and the shrooms that are in the tea through a strainer and into my coffee mug, and then stir in the spoonful of sugar.
Give me sugar.
As for the shroom pieces, I used to eat those. Somebody told me that you get extra, fucked up.
The snozberries taste like snozberries.
Or extra trippy, I guess I should say, when you eat the pieces too. And that makes sense because there's probably still some degrees of psilocybin still in there. But now I just toss them in my compost bin.
By your powers combined, I am Captain Planet. Captain Planet, he's our hero. Gonna take pollution down to zero.
The tea making process makes a potent enough dose that I don't feel the need to chase any lingering psilocybin that may be hanging out in parts of the remaining mushrooms. So yeah, I just toss that. But now, guess what's next?
Oh no.
The drinking of the tea part. So now with my tea made, it's time to drink. I brought the tea to my lips.
What's this, sir?
Drink it.
And began to drink 3 large swallows, and the tea and extracted psilocybin was inside me. And of course, my first thought was, I wonder if 7.56 grams was too much.
It's too late to rot, Malone. It's too late.
Pro tip, that's not the right time to consider your dose. Don't wait until your dose is inside you before you consider if the size is too large or not. That ship has sailed. So I said, fuck it, and I embraced the thrill of uncertainty and then chased the tea with about 6 ounces of orange juice. My next move is my recommendation for starting a trip. I recommend anybody who trips, you should try this at least once. Start your trip in the shower. Cool shower if it's a hot sunny day. Hot shower if it was cold, like it was the day that I did my trip the other day. I don't know what it is, but starting a trip while in the shower with the water rhythmically falling around you and the steam is opening your sinuses, it feels amazing. Oh, it feels so good! Almost spiritual, but not spiritual like religious sense, but in like spiritual in like the raw, primal kind of way. So that's how it began. Oh, and I was playing this mind-stimulating trip music. So you see how it created the perfect start to what I thought was going to be a completely positive trip. Dope music, relaxing water, then the 7.56 gram dose, a dose that I need to remind you was 2.5 grams greater than I've ever had before, reached my brain. After the impact, the first thing I noticed was my hearing seemed to grow dramatically stronger.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Not saying noises got louder, but rather more defined. Like if I was to hear a car crash, I would be able to hear every individual bend of metal and every last piece of glass come to a rest. Also, my vision seemed to take on a tint of color, kind of like an Instagram filter. To be specific, a mix between Mayflower and Nashville.
Hit me on the gram.
Now my trip was not only kicking in with more potency than I've ever experienced, it was also hitting faster.
We're gonna have to go right to ludicrous speed. Sir, we've never gone that fast before.
And by that I mean the rate of climb to full speed tripping balls.
What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken?
Even with my past previous 5 gram trips, there was a degree of gradual climb. But this trip, it felt like my brain was being shot into another universe on the tip of a rocket ship. Then there I was, tripping balls. Now, you remember that dope music that I was playing before? Yeah, that one. Well, now this music sounds like this. I didn't change the music, it just sounds like that. But yeah, the trip was getting intense, and I definitely needed to attempt to bring it down some. I turned off the shower, stepped out, and then everything started to slightly separate. What I mean by that is everything, the walls, the bathroom mirrors, the toiletries on the counter, absolutely everything started to slightly separate at an atomic level. Not completely, but just enough for me to be able to see space between each atom of matter that made up whatever it was that I was looking at. Now remember that part because it does become relevant later on in the story. So now I'm tripping balls. I'm tripping balls at a level I didn't know was possible.
Whoa!
I attempt to dry off with a towel.
Does anybody want their dick sucked by a towel?
But that towel, it felt like the fur of like a mythical goat in my hands. Every texture of everything I touched seemed to be altered and more stimulating to my skin.
Touch me, and I'll kill you.
Then the mushroom spirits in my brain decided I wasn't having enough fun yet. The spirits decided to tell me to go outside and cool off. I should remind you that it's wintertime and I live in Minnesota, and I still don't have any clothes on.
I'll fuck you till you love me.
Also, I live in an upper middle class neighborhood of mostly 40-year-old white people. The type of white people that leave notes on the windshield of your slightly modified 2010 Crown Victoria that say things like, please respect your neighbors and not drive so fast.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
The point is, I couldn't go outside naked and expose those people to my modest 6.5, 7 inches on a good day dick swinging around the cul-de-sac. Mostly because then they would have to find a place to stick that new note. But regardless of my concerns, the spirits were still telling me to get out into the cold of the night, so I decided to meet them halfway and step into the garage. Still naked, mind you.
You need to put some clothes on.
I definitely didn't fix that part. Now here's the part I told you to remember when I said everything was breaking down at an atomic level and separating and I could see space. As I approached the door, my psilocybin-soaked brain was still telling me that the atoms that make up the material of the door are separating, and I thought for a moment that maybe I could just walk through the door. Now here's where it gets weird.
This is all wrong.
I understand this is a hallucination. This is just part of the ride, but I can't remember if I opened the door or if I really did walk through it. I don't know.
There are white folks, and then there are ignorant motherfuckers like you.
Right? Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. All I know is I got outside, and I don't remember opening the door. I don't know. I'm going to leave that up for your interpretation of what happened. Maybe I opened the door. Maybe I actually did pass through the door. I don't know. But regardless, I got outside in the garage into the cold.
Can you feel it coming? The icy cold of space.
It felt wonderful. I was dripping with sweat from the effects of the shrooms, and the cool air at around 36 degrees felt amazing, especially on my exposed nutsack.
My balls was hot.
Still though, everything was still crazy and my senses still stimulated. I don't have my phone with me, so no music is playing, but I still hear that creepy, bad trip music. And of course now, just to pile on, I guess, I have to pee. And I do pee. Right on my garage floor. I know, gross, right?
How dare you?
But I had no choice. My mind was pulsing with psilocybin, and I had to call an audible. Also, I aimed for the bottom of the garage door, so most of it made it outside, I guess. With that piss did come good news, in that taking a piss seemed to bring the trip down some. I think that, and don't quote me on this, I don't know the science on this yet, I should probably look it up, but I think that psilocybin doesn't decay or weaken in your system. I think it's in your system until you expel it out of your system. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
So I imagine that's, why the pee helped. I'm still feeling more than a 5-gram dose, but it's manageable at this point. So eventually I get done pissing and cooling off in the garage, and I head back into the house. And for the rest of the trip, I kind of just laid in bed.
It's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
And processed random thoughts, questioning yourself, your decisions, your direction in life, all the things you should be doing while on mushrooms. And then basically just enjoyed the roll as I fell asleep. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, I was running on about 5 hours of sleep and had a busy afternoon before this. And if I would have had more rest, I would have got more time to enjoy the trip because I would have been awake and I could have handled the power. Well, I think I could have handled the power of the trip better, I'm sure. But the following day, which is actually technically yesterday because I started recording this after midnight the next day. So, but regardless, the next day after the trip, I spent it sleeping over 10 hours. Yeah, I was definitely recovering from the impact of the 7.5 gram shroom trip. But overall, it felt good. I felt and still do right now, feel very calm and relaxed. More relaxed than I was before the trip. And I definitely feel a little bit more happiness overall.
Don't worry, be happy.
So while I think I could have got more ego-busting work done if I was more well-rested, and if I would have maybe done a gram smaller dose, I could have got more out of the whole deal overall. But the trip was good. 6 out of 10 if I was to give it a rating.
Not bad, not bad.
It is a learning experience as everyone is, and it's not just what you learn, through the experience itself, but it's also your process that you learn. You learn what you're doing. Again, everything when dealing with psychedelic drugs of whatever you want to call them drugs. Preparation and planning, as I started this off with, is very important. So notes have been made now, and I will be better prepared next time.
Yes. And the next time,
I go for a 6 to slightly over 6 gram dose, probably in the next 3 to 4 months. Now we're at the final segment of this episode of the Filter Free America podcast. And I do want to thank you all for listening and putting up with my different editing and episode assembly style with this episode, with the drops and sound effects and what have you. I thought it would be fun for this episode, and it is an experiment for a new version of the Filter Free America podcast that I'm considering including alongside the regular interview episodes. So if you enjoyed that particular part of this episode, please reach out to me and let me know. Don't forget there's always a really easy way to contact me about this or about anything on the podcast or recommendations or whatever. If you just want to reach out, just go to filterfreeamerica.com, and that's the website. And if you go there is a contact tab where you can send a message via the website. That's probably the absolute easiest way. Or just add me on Facebook or the Filter Free America page on Facebook. But again, please give me your thoughts on this episode styling and see if it's worth me to continue doing. Now, to end this episode, though, I do want to include part of a Terence McKenna lecture on psychedelics. It's not too long. It's just an excerpt. It's just under 12 minutes. And he talks about taking heroic-sized doses and dealing with the effects and smashing up your ego in the process. So please enjoy that. And remember, if you do decide to try shrooms, do so safely and do so with much more information and education than is included in this podcast. All right. I love you all. Keep seeking the truth. And here to close out the show is Terence McKenna.
This is reasonable advice, too, I think. Where the problem area lies, people think it lies in taking too much. It lies in taking too little. Because if you take too little, you can resist it. You can struggle with it. And then it can turn into a real mess because you're afraid of it. And you actually have the power to some degree to resist it. What you want to do is take sufficiently enough that there's no escape, and that the transition from ordinary reality to fully loaded is as quick as possible, because the going up is somewhat terrifying. For example, let's use psilocybin as the model. Here's how it works for me. This is not tea, this is eating raw mushrooms. It comes on more slowly. So after an hour or so, and the way I do it is I sit As soon as the mushroom enters my body, I sit and meditate. I noticed in South America they don't do it like this. They dose the ayahuasca, and then everybody just goes on talking about their motorcycles and the jobs at the sawmill and who's conning who. It's like totally, they toss it. There's a brief moment, they pour, they toss it down, then they all go back to raving at each other about mundane life, and then 30 minutes later on the dot, the shaman blows his whistle or shakes his shakyapa, his leaf, dry leaf bouquet, and everybody settles down, and it's like it comes on within 2 minutes. As soon as the guy starts singing, he just invokes it. The way I do it is I take the mushroom or the ayahuasca, and then I sit and I roll bombers, so I'll have them ready if I need them. And I just sit as I'm going to sit during the trip, and I've unplugged the telephone, and I've gotten everything squared away, and it begins to come on at about the 40-minute or the 60-minute mark, and there's sometimes some nausea as it comes on, and then I smoke a bomber or half a bomber. And then it catapults it into the full deployment of the thing, where you just hang on. There's about a 25-minute period where all your only job is to hang on. It builds. It's like watching an atomic explosion on the other side of 50 feet of absolutely clear crystal glass. I mean, you can't believe this is happening, quote unquote, in my mind. You have the feeling that everybody from Seattle to San Diego has just crawled under their desk as this thing tore past, but it's in your mind. And then there is the interaction with it, which moment to moment you are pretty coherent, but you lose it. A lot of it does not transcribe into short-term memory. And then after about an hour or 40 minutes of that, it becomes more manageable, more memorable. The most mind-boggling parts of it are just not possible to bring out of it because language fails. Because English, there are no words. There are no words even close. I mean, sometimes you'll bring out an image or a metaphor, but out of 5 hours of tripping, you bring out, half a notebook page of metaphors, and yet you were entirely engaged during that time. Now, this question about fear, which is a real question, because when everything begins to slide, if it's more than most people who haven't done it expect. They have heard it, they've read the books, but they think it's a metaphor. They don't understand it's really going to happen, and it's really going to happen to you. And there's a tendency to clutch or to try and resist it. The thing to do in those situations, I think, and it's counterintuitive to how Western people think, but the thing to do is to sing, to sit up, not to assume the fetal position. See, what you might tend to do is assume the fetal position and tell yourself, my God, this is the most appalling thing that's ever happened to me. If I can just live through it, it'll be all right. I've taken this drug. If I can just wait through. How long did they say it will be? 7 hours. I see it started 2 minutes ago. If I can just... No, the thing to do is to sit up and to sing. And why? Well, being practical people, to oxygenate your brain, to move this thing that's happened to you, though it may have one claw in heaven, its roots are in your neurophysiology and in the chemistry of the drug. You want to move your physiology around. So oxygenating your brain can't fail to do this. So you sing, and this almost always is accompanied by a sense of power, control, equilibrium, and so forth and so on. Not always. I mean, let's face it, you're a product of a nutty society, and there are unexamined crevices and uncleaned out drain traps in all of us, and you're going to encounter that stuff. The good news is the earlier psychedelic trips tend to deal with that. If you will quickly discover taking psychedelics that either you can work through your personal issues and become a psychedelic explorer, or this is just stronger medicine than you are up for, and you would be far better to go back to psychoanalysis or whatever works for you. Some people just can't take it. Why is that? Well, because what it does is it dissolves boundaries, and most of us are over boundary defined, but some of us are having an uphill battle getting some boundaries in place and realizing we are not the telephone or the tree or the person we live with. And so for those people who are having trouble establishing and maintaining boundaries, this is the last thing on earth they should get involved. Cannabis. 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 Yeah.
When you're in the state that you're experiencing the total loss of ego or boundary, is it possible that your physical self could just literally stop? Because I have...
Well, people often, yes, wonders. Often people wonder. You get into a place where it's so unfamiliar that the question comes up, have I done it this time? You know, am I dying or am I in danger? The answer is, the odds are incredibly against you being seriously in danger. People don't die from psychedelics unless they have heart conditions or some incredibly rare medical condition. The problem is that the ego feels threatened by the boundary dissolution, and its ace is your self-identification with it. And it can actually say to you, you are dying, and here's the evidence. And you have to say, no, it's unlikely, and sing your way through it. But this is really tough. I mean, this is, the Buddhists talk about slaying the ego. This is slaying the ego for real. You must slay it, otherwise it will spread panic into your whole psychological system, will give way to panic and hysteria. So unless there is some real reason to think you're dying, and you should have done your homework, you should know what to expect. For example, if you take LSD and begin intense bouts of vomiting, this is not a proper reaction to LSD. Something is wrong, either with the LSD or with your relationship to it. You should know what because a typical trip will put you through changes, but is not dangerous. But if you suddenly begin exhibiting some symptom, heart fibrillation or something like that, then you want to have... this is why then there's always the issue of the buddy system. Should there be somebody else there? And what about all that? My position is, if you're anxious, then you should have a sitter. If you're going to do it alone, you should certainly tell someone so that they will check on you after a while. I don't like doing it in groups or with sitters because inevitably I get spun into them. What I want to do is go as deep as possible and and even if I'm alone with one other person, culture is the third guest at the table. If you start... I've often found myself in the middle of psychedelic trips thinking, I'm sure glad there's nobody else here to see this, because I'm sure it would alarm an observer, because I have my leg thrown back up over my neck and I'm screaming in Urdu or something. But it's okay. After a few minutes, it's okay. But if there were an observer, they would feel the need to do something, you know. And often, like I've seen people smoking DMT, and people moan, and they say, no, no, no. And they moan, and so then, you know, you get them back together and constituted, and you say, how was it? And they say, it was fantastic.